So we're just moving right along. Plenary session 5 is going to be about strengthening the international recovery platform to deliver the priority actions. And so it's going to be, this session is a little bit different from the others. It's going to be in 2 segments. The first, so 2 distinct segments, the first being IRP members and international organizations, and the second going to the member states. If I can maybe invite the first segment up to the stage, first starting with our moderator, Mr. No? Mr. Abhilash Panda, Deputy Chief of Intergovernmental Processes, Interagency Cooperation and Partnerships Branch at UNDRR. Sorry if I called you up out of order. Ms. Paula Albrito, is Paula here? Are we going to flip? We're going to invert it. We'll go to the countries first. Okay, sorry, I missed the memo. Okay, we will invert it. We'll go to the countries first. So, joining us on the stage. 1, 2, 3. We have 3 speakers that will join Mr. Panda on the stage. Mr. Paulo Roberto Falcão, Deputy National Secretary for Civil Protection and Defense and Director of Civil Works, Brazil. Mr. Elac Olivier Andriacaja, Director General for National Disaster and Risk Management Authority for the Republic of Madagascar. And Mr. Camille Peter Corissa, the head of the National Recovery Coordination Unit for the government of Vanuatu. I'd like to welcome you all to the stage. Who are we missing? We're missing one. The speaker from Vanuatu. He's coming. Okay. Mr. Panda, I hand it to you.
Thank you, Paul. All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is the last but one session, and the point of this session is to discuss a bit about with all of you, and not just my panel here. If the time permits, we definitely would like to hear from all of you on how do we go about strengthening the international recovery platform. Now, you, to a certain extent, have been hearing international recovery platform a bit since yesterday, if this is the first time you are here. And I want to actually take a stock of how many people in this room are actually know international recovery platform before even delve into the discussion of itself. Just as a matter of background, International Recovery Platform, in short, IRP, was established in 2005. You definitely heard it yesterday, but also in the background documentation of things. Now, it's been since 2005, following the Kobe earthquake. It was just put in place to be a platform which brings together various international agencies who are involved in recovery across multiple countries, international financing institutions, member states, and other actors into it. It has tried to do quite a lot of things. The International Recovery Platform has also gone through its own phases of things, at times trying to also help countries in doing capacity development or working closely with member states. In fact, day before yesterday, I came across a photograph of the International Recovery Platform's retreat back in 2006. And some of the faces in that, they are the stalwarts of disaster management or recovery in itself. 1 or 2 of them are in this room also, or at least were there in the room yesterday, and some still around here. Now, what we wanted to do today is do the discussion within 60 minutes, but in 2 parts. One is to have a conversation with member states, because at the end of the day, recovery is more in your domain of work, and that's where I think things get very busy and difficult for you. Maybe not. And then another set of conversation with the recovery platforms, IRP's core partners, because we want to hear from both sides. What's needed, what can be done, or what should be done. But before I go to introduce my first panel, I just need a quick show of hands. How many of you are in this room, or how many are here who have heard the IRP for the first time, the International Recovery Platform? I hope there is 1 or 2 hands. Please, 1, 2, right? So there's still a bit of scope, right, for IRP to be more visible and be able to do what it needs to do, what it was established for. We hope the next time when we have this conversation, we will have far less hands, maybe none at all. But that requires a concentrated effort from all sides, from the agencies that are involved in the International Recovery Platform, but also the member states who actually can reach out to IRP in case there is a need for something in particular. So that was a bit of a background. So for the first round of discussion, I have 3 panel members. I have Mr. Paulo here from Brazil. I had the opportunity of working closely with him last year during the G20 presidency of Brazil. On my left, I have Mr. Elak from the Republic of Madagascar. Thank you very much. And to his left is Mr. Camille from the government of Vanuatu. Thank you very much. I have a bit of similar question, but a bit in a different context. Let's put it like that. 3 different countries, from 3 different regions, different perspectives, different problems. You may have some kind of exposures which are similar, maybe hydrometeorological or to a certain extent seismic. But Brazil is a large country, quite a lot of administrative boundaries within itself. There were floods last year. There have been other events in the past, maybe multiple other hazards or risks that Brazil is factoring in. Brazil also has a huge civil protection. Maybe not the case when we turn to the left. We'll have other discussion in itself. But whatever you know about IRP, International Recovery Platform, or the entire apparatus around it, for a country a size of Brazil and the administrative structure, boundaries that you have, what do you see as some areas where maybe IRP or the partnership around it, I'm not going to refrain it just to the existing IRP partnership, but largely partnership of international agencies, IFIs. What could it do for Brazil that could help you be more resilient for recovery?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. It's a great honor to join you today to reflect on how International Recovery Platform can better support large federal systems such as Brazil, where disaster risk management responsibility are shared across multiple levels of government. Brazil, like many other federative countries, has a governance structure that distributes authority among national, state, and municipal levels. This structure brings both advantages and challenges. On one hand, it enables response and recovery actions to be carried out close to the affected communities, respecting local contexts and realities. On the other, it demands strong coordination, clear roles, and effective capacity development. Otherwise, recovery may become fragmented or delayed. Furthermore, in a country as vast and diverse as Brazil, reducing inequalities, whether social or economic, is critical. Disasters tend to hit the most vulnerable population hardest. And if we do not address inequalities as a structural cause of risk, recovery process will never be fully effective. The International Recovery Platform, with its global experience, can play a crucial role in such contexts in 3 main ways. The first is knowledge sharing and guidance. IRP has the expertise and convening power to gather, organize, and disseminate international good practice in recovery planning. A practical guidance tailored to multi-level governance systems is crucial to align strategies across local, state, and federal authorities. So recovery planning would integrate equity considerations in such a way that rebuilding does not reinforce inequalities, but rather contributes to reducing them. The second area is capacity development at all levels. For countries like Brazil, where thousands of municipalities have different levels of capacity, training, peer-to-peer exchanges, and technical support should not be limited to national institutions. It's essential to empower mayors, state civil defense agencies, and local technical teams, because they are on the front lines of disaster response and recovery. We believe that building capacities at all levels is the most effective way to bridge the gap between policy design at the national level and the concrete implementation on the ground. Third area is facilitating dialogue and coordination mechanisms. Recovery in federal systems requires integrating the immediate needs of affected communities with long-term national priorities. IRP can provide technical assistance to reinforce recovery governance structures, ensuring that post-disaster investments are harmonized, inclusive, and aligned with the principles of building back better. A stronger dialogue platform would also support the inclusion of vulnerable groups so their voices are heard in decision-making and their needs reflected in recovery strategies. By reinforcing knowledge, building capacities, promoting coordination, and by explicitly addressing inequalities as a root cause of vulnerability, IRP can help federal systems like Brazil turn the complexity of shared responsibilities into a genuine source of resilience. Recovery then becomes not only a process of rebuilding what was lost, but also an opportunity to reduce risks, to promote social justice, and to reinforce bonds between communities and governments at every level.
Thanks. Thank you very much. So just helping to summarize, three main areas that you would see. One is knowledge and practical guidance, capacity development, which includes peer-to-peer technical assistance, but also coordination mechanisms and support to that structure in itself. That would vary from a country-to-country context, right? Like working with, country like Brazil versus, when you go to other countries, that architecture and that process may itself look very different to itself. Maybe I'll come back to you after we hear from Madagascar and Vanuatu and see if there is anything else that we could complement further from that conversation.
Sure.
Yeah. Mr. Elak, I understand you would be speaking in French, so colleagues, if you have a earpiece, please, you may need to use it now. That would be on channel 1 or 2, I think you'll be able to figure out. Now, we all are privy to the challenges Madagascar has been facing from floods and cyclones in the last few years. It has had quite a huge impact, not just on the economy, but also on the lives of people and the socioeconomic situation in itself. The question that I have for you is more or less very similar to what I asked our colleague from Brazil. What is that the international platform such as the IRP could do, which could assist Madagascar to be ready for maybe for the next one, if not for this one, per se? Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, for asking me this question. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, representation was already given early by my moderator, but just a small confirmation. I am a military officer and I'm Major General. First, I would also like to express my deep gratitude to government of Japan, as well to organizer of this external forum of the International Recovery Platform. Mr. Moderator, with your permission, I would like to answer your question in French, since my English is very limited. Mesdames et messieurs, je vous remercie pour cette opportunité et c'est un honneur, au nom de Madagascar, de participer à ce dialogue de haut niveau organisé par l'International Recovery Platform, IRP, dans le cadre de la Semaine de la reconstruction créative à Yoko. Notre session Struggling RP to Deliver the Priority Actions nous invite à franchir un cap, passer de la connaissance à l'action concrète. ma thèse est simple. L'IRP doit évoluer d'une plateforme de capitalisation vers une plateforme d'exécution de la préparation au relèvement résiliente. Preparedness for Resilient Recovery, P4R, au service des pays les plus exposés, en cohérence avec les Priority Actions adoptées en 2025. Ce saut qualitatif s'inscrit pleinement dans le cadre de sondage qui recommande de mieux comprendre les risques, renforcer la gouvernance, investir pour la résilience et enfin reconstruire plus efficace. Build Backer Better. Avec ses 20 ans d'existence, l'IRP possède une légitimité unique pour impulser ce mouvement et articuler les résultats des Global Platform et de la Haute Resilient Recovery Conference. Madagascar, grande île tropicale, est structurellement exposée aux cyclones, aux inondations et dans le Grand Sud à la sécheresse. Ces risques, accentués par les changements climatiques, rendent notre trajectoire de développement particulièrement vulnérable. Les leçons récentes sont claires. En 2022, 4 systèmes cycloniques ont causé des dommages directs estimés à 658 millions de dollars, à peu près aux environs de 4,8% du PIB 2020. En 2024, les cyclones Gamané a provoqué environ 251 millions de dollars de dommages, aux environs de 1,6% du PIB 2023, touchant fortement l'agriculture, notamment la vanille, l'habitat et les structures, avec au moins 11 ponts endommagés ou détruits. Ces expériences montrent qu'une gouvernance du relèvement anticipé réduit considérablement les délais et les surcoûts, comme le démontrent nos évaluations rapides et les grades successifs. Dans notre stratégie nationale de la gestion des risques et des catastrophes, la priorité 4 de sondage, préparation aux catastrophes pour intervenir efficacement et mieux reconstruire, est déjà inscrite. L'enjeu est désormais d'accélérer son opérationnalisation du niveau national au local en sécurisant gouvernance, financement et données. Monsieur le modérateur, pour répondre à votre question sur le rôle que l'IRP devrait jouer dans le renforcement de la gouvernance de la préparation au relèvement dans les pays exposés aux catastrophes, je propose 10 axes de collaboration entre Madagascar et l'IRP. Premièrement, élaboration de plans national de relèvement. Parce que Madagascar dispose d'une politique et d'une stratégie nationale de la gestion des risques et des catastrophes, ainsi que de plusieurs plans de contingence, cyclones, inondations, sécheresse, pandémie, et plans de réponse humanitaire comme l'insécurité alimentaire, la malnutrition, etc., etc. Et cependant, il n'existe pas encore de plan d'intervention spécifique au relèvement. Donc, l'IRP pourrait soutenir Madagascar dans l'élaboration et dans ces plans essentiels. Deuxièmement, application des normes et guides Building Back Better. La CPGI, une entité à Madagascar qui collabore étroitement avec le BNGRC, élabore et publie des normes pour les infrastructures résilientes, les routes, les bâtiments, télécommunications, etc., etc., mais elles ne sont pas encore appliquées au niveau local. Donc, l'IRP pourrait accompagner la CPGU pour déployer des formations certifiantes au niveau décentralisé, c'est-à-dire jusqu'au niveau de communes et de régions. Troisièmement, renforcement des capacités d'évaluation des pertes. Le BNGRC est doté de simples évaluations des dommages pour réaliser des évaluations de pertes budgétisées. Une formation sur des méthodologies telles que le PDNI, RDILA, Post-Disaster and Need Assessment, Rapid Damage and Loss Assessment serait particulièrement utile. Quatrièmement, financement préarrangé et Fonds national des contingences. Le Fonds national des contingences crée grâce aux efforts de l'État monégasque un fonds commun auquel devraient contribuer les acteurs humanitaires à Madagascar. Mais actuellement, seul l'État y participe, aux environs de 400 000 $ par an. Et l'IRP pourrait faciliter la mobilisation des partenaires techniques et financiers pour renforcer ces fonds et plaider en faveur de Madagascar. Cinquièmement, mise en place d'une plateforme intersectorielle de données. Le BNGRC est l'organe habilité à produire le bilan officiel des catastrophes, mais la collecte des données reste un défi majeur. Donc, l'IRP pourrait soutenir la création d'une plateforme intersectorielle fiable, capable de collecter, centraliser et partager rapidement les informations. 6. Formation et application locale des normes d'infrastructure. Les normes publiées par la CPGI ne sont pas encore pleinement appliquées localement, mais l'IRP pourrait aider à étendre ces normes et organiser des formations certifiantes pour les acteurs locaux en lien avec des organismes de certification ISO ou ONG indépendantes. Enfin, d'améliorer les standards nationaux. Développement hub logistique. Septièmement, grâce au WFP, Programme alimentaire mondial, un hub logistique a été établi à Manakara, une région à Madagascar particulièrement très vulnérable. Ce hub est essentiel pour la réponse et le relèvement. Parce que je pense que l'IRP pourrait appuyer le BNGRC dans la création de hubs logistiques supplémentaires dans toutes les zones vulnérables du pays. Huitièmement, exercice de simulation sur relèvement. L'exercice annuel à Madagascar se concentre surtout sur la préparation et la réponse aux urgences. Et l'IRP pourrait soutenir l'organisation d'exercices de simulation dédiés au relèvement pour mieux préparer les acteurs locaux et nationaux. Mobilisation des partenaires structurés, le BNGRC bénéficie déjà de l'appui de bailleurs tels que la Banque mondiale, la BAD, principalement pour réponse aux urgences. L'IRP pourrait jouer un rôle charnière pour coordonner les bailleurs et les PTF, afin de renforcer l'appui dédié au relèvement, optimiser la reconstruction et multiplier les ressources disponibles dans les cadres à reconstruire à mieux. Et enfin, pour terminer, donc, dixièmement, inclusion et sauvegarde. Enfin, l'IRP pourrait fournir des guides et outils pour intégrer l'inclusion et la dimension genre de relèvement, garantissant ainsi une reconstruction plus équitable et durable. Merci beaucoup. Je m'excuse parce que je sais que c'est un peu long. J'ai essayé de parler lentement et c'est pour cela que vraiment ça dure longtemps. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was a very precise, specific list of areas that you think could be of assistance which is very helpful, but it's also for the broader partnership of this international recovery platform to see, what should be done and what's feasible and what requires additional efforts in making it happen. But taking note of, I think the biggest summary line that I would put, which you also mentioned, is that from knowledge to action. And actions then depends on the context and the needs of the member state in this particular situation. And so it would be on different one. But thank you very much. So, but in interest of time, because I also would like to hear from the partners of International Recovery Platform after they have heard you on what can be done. I would then go to you, Mr. Kamil. Vanavatu, you also mentioned during one of the roundtables, the one before, that there have been recent events, and you're in the process of recovery, right? Recovery, long-term recovery, reconstruction, so on and so forth. So, if there was one thing in hindsight that you could have asked IRP to do during this ongoing effort, what would that be?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you, moderator. And thank you to colleagues and also the audience. I think there are a lot of gaps with our experience from the recovery process. I try to sum up and summarize into 3 key points: the governance, resource mobilization, and implementation process. In terms of governance, Vanuatu has been establishing so many policies and legislations to do with DRR and climate change. We also have our own legislation on disaster recovery and resilience. Also with relation to climate change, because we are one of the countries within the Pacific region, especially the Southwest Pacific, where we are exposed to so many natural hazards. That's why our exposure level is quite high. So we have to develop a policy and also legislation to govern our small island nation. Now, during the recovery processes that we've been going through, ever since 2015, the tropical cyclone Palm was Category 5, and then later followed by several disasters, COVID-19, the compound disaster, COVID-19 and tropical cyclone Harold. And then also we have a very recent 2 cyclones, the twin cyclone, Judy and Kevin, Category 5. And then after then we have, last year we have earthquake, magnitude 7.4 that hit Port Vila. So in fact, in reality, we are sort of in a constant recovery process. Therefore, we have to develop so many policies. The challenge with the policies and legislation, it's something that we need to how we can harmonize along different policies that we have and different legislation we have. So that there is a harmonization when we address the climate-related disasters and also the geological disasters, induced disasters. In terms of resource mobilization, Vanuatu is a small island nation compared to my 2 colleagues here from Brazil and Madagascar. In terms of resources, we also have challenges with resources scarcity. The impact of those number of disasters that has been affecting our country is overwhelming, and it exceeds our normal annual budget, and even the GDP rate that we have. Those disasters account for a large amount of recovery cost that the country can pay. That's our challenge. And as well as, again, under the resource mobilization, we also have not just the financing, but also the technical side of things, know-how to actually do the speedy recovery process. In terms of implementation challenges, during this recent earthquake, it's quite unique because the impact of earthquake, the intensity of earthquake, it's different compared to the cyclone and other disasters. So that's very challenging for Vanuatu to really come up to how to trace the intensity, the impact of an earthquake, which we don't have that capacity to really respond to such type of intensity of an earthquake. The issues that raised within this is more to do with partnership. How do we really strengthen the partnership between the private sector and the government to do the recovery process and reconstruction? That include rehabilitation and reconstruction processes. It's also a challenge for us to really come up with a strong partnership between the private sectors and as well as the development partners. Another thing is the inclusiveness with, in terms of how do you really involve the community level with the national decisions that is made by the government to really accelerate the recovery and reconstruction processes. Capacity building, it's also a challenge like I mentioned earlier. You may have a fund in a small country like Vanuatu, a population with 300,000 plus people. You can have a fund to implement the recovery, but again, you need to have a capacity to really know how to really speed up the work process and do the reconstruction. So until now, after a few months from earthquake, we're still struggling to rebuild back our main city, which is badly hit by the December last year's earthquake. And this is due to lack of our internal capacity to really respond and speed up the recovery and reconstruction process. In terms of, again, as part of implementation challenges, we also have difficulties with mutual understanding between parties. This is, comes down to contracts and tender processes. When we receive development assistance from development partners, then we have a sort of agreement, how to utilize the funds. So you have to really have a very good mutual agreement between the partners to really speed up the process for recovery. Yeah, I think those are the key main areas with our recent experience that we have been experiencing for the last few months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kamil. I'll interpret in a way that these are some of the areas similar to how what colleague from Madagascar mentioned as potential areas where maybe a platform such as IRP could have assisted or could assist in itself. There are some similarities across all the three ideas or the areas of interventions you had. For instance, capacity, knowledge, they were common. The issues around multiple policies, whether be the recovery policies or development policies, and how they could be harmonized in the process, technical assistance, and to look at some of the specificities around it in itself. The intent of talking to you first was to also come to that kind of conclusion, whether are there some common areas that we definitely need to look at, and then there would be some specificities for each country that needs to be then curated in the delivery of those assistance and packages. Now, I sincerely do not have time to take questions from the floor, but I'm sure colleagues in the room and outside who are listening you will definitely take the opportunity to talk to you on your experiences, and if there are any further clarifications they would like to have. Because what I would like to do, I would like to then move to the next set of panel members to hear from them based on what you are saying as needs and what can be done in itself. So appreciate your interventions. Thank you very much. And can I please have a good round of applause for all our three colleagues? And you can excuse yourself, so because I could then invite the next set of my panel members, right? Could I then kindly invite Ms. Paula Arbito, Director, UNDRR, Stephen Goldfinch, Senior Disaster Management Officer from Asian Development Bank, Ms. Makiko Hashi from the Cabinet Office of Japan to join us. Very much. I'm also most likely standing between some travel plans and conversation, so I'll make it happen, as I would not try to keep that very long for anyone. I don't need to even summarize what you heard before this. You were all in the room, but as you would have noticed, 3 different countries. I also don't want to generalize it, but maybe there were some common issues that they all are encountering with. There are some very different specific needs that some of them have. And even if we don't generalize, maybe we can categorize them across a set of needs that countries are facing when it comes to readiness for recovery or resilience recovery or the needs for recovery. Now, UNDRR, Paula, has been the secretariat to IRP since its outset. UNDRR, so the IRP is also in the process of developing its new strategic framework. There was the midterm review in 2003, which also brought forward some very stark reminders when it comes about recovery and so on and so forth. So taking in view that we are looking at the last 5 years of the Sendai framework, and recovery and build back better was one of the issues that we still need to address in a more comprehensive way. So what would you see as some of the critical areas that IRP should definitely try to address, taking in context all of these issues and the needs of the countries, as you heard? And there are many more countries who were not in this panel, but in the other panels who we're speaking to.
Abhilash, thank you very much for your question. And also very important to have had the call from member countries on what they would be their needs and therefore the opportunity for IRP. I think we are here discussing the IRP and mostly how the IRP can best embrace the need of the countries, and how can the recovery readiness turn into a reality as impact on the ground. And this is fundamentally important to the IRP and fundamentally important also to UNDRR. Now, as you mentioned, the midterm review on the implementation of the Sendai framework was really a key momentum in order to distill the necessity to focus on the recovery readiness. And the message was so loud and clear that UNDRR, as Abhilash mentioned, has now finalized the strategic framework. They will take the organization from next year to 2030. And one of the catalytic areas of our strategic framework is precisely recovery readiness. And this is really to fill this gap. With this consideration in mind, and with the role that UNDRR has played as an IRP, let me highlight some of the elements that I believe can respond to the call that we heard from member countries, but also at the same time see an evolution of the international recovery platform that clearly is in need as a platform, and that has served very strongly for the past 20 years, and it can really accelerate the support in the implementation of the Sendai framework for the next year to come. So, and actually, I would like to say that this should also be a sort of commitments that we are making as IRP members. And in a way, these are the commitments that UNDRR is making also to the IRP and the different countries. So the first one, the first commitment is precisely linked to what I was mentioning on the fact that our next strategic framework will have these areas of engagement as one of the core focus, which means in return that we're going to have dedicated resources, we're going to have expertise, we're going to be dedicated time to shape up also the technical knowledge that is needed. The second consideration is something that you have heard probably and has been mentioned in the different parts of the panels. We need to roll out the recovery readiness assessment framework. This is a tool that has been developed with the IRP, but UNDRR is currently with the IRP implementing this assessment tool in a number of pilot countries. We would like to commit to the finalization of the piloting and to have, therefore, this important assessment tool ready for all member countries by 2026, by next year. I think one message that has come very clear during this past 2 days and a half is that commitment and therefore actions needs to take place on the ground. So what does it mean on the ground? It means having the possibility to translating the priority actions that we have all agreed in June, these 10 priority actions, into concrete elements at the national level. What does it mean, therefore, the development of action plans at the national level? What does it mean, the development of the training programs and the call on capacity development that has been made? The fourth one, which I think it comes as a consequence on what we've been discussing in these past 2 days, is the fact that we are committing, as UNDRR, or we are committed to see how the IRP can move from being a risk knowledge, opportunity and platform into something that is more concretely linked to the countries needs, and therefore to what we can do in order to support the countries. I think this is going to be really tangible as an opportunity, but also it will allow to accelerate the implementation of the Sendai framework. And the last commitment is something that is somehow part of the DNA of UNDRR, which is to mobilize high-level commitment towards this topic. High-level commitment is fundamentally important. We want to have the impact in the community, but you need to have the leaders that are committed towards this important topic. And for this, we do have key momentums that are happening as part of the IRP, the World Resilience Recovery Conference, but beyond that, we are going to be taking forward the recovery readiness in key fora that we are contributing or facilitating. Let's think about the G20 working group on disaster risk reduction. This is a key opportunity. We are going to be continuing hosting the global platform and the regional platforms. These are going to be key momentum in order to see how we can tangibly move forward this high-level commitment. But in concluding, let me say that in the end, we need to have commitments, and also we need to have capacity to move things forward. So therefore, all of us as IRP members should also be active in trying to engage donors in finding energy in order to be able to move forward this work. And if you can put together a good, not only idea, but a number of tools in order to implement these priority actions with the financial capacity, we will definitely be steady in the support. And finally, I think that any sort of commitment that we make as individual, as organization, and as international recovery platform needs to be a commitment that gives us the opportunity to be leaders on what we believe. So the most important thing is for all of us, member of the IRP, to really lead on this work and embrace it as much as possible. Because as we have all realized, something that we considered as a given is still one of the biggest challenges. How do you recover and respond to a disaster in a way in which you are building your resilience? Therefore, breaking this famous cycle of constantly having to respond to disaster, because you do have vulnerability that are part of the way in which you are pressured to recover. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. I was hesitant to use the term commitment, but glad you introduced that, because indeed that's very critical, but also very helpful of you that you laid out very specific areas that our commitment that needs to be or will be delivered or is in the line of pipeline of action in itself. You mentioned the need of resources, but the capacity is also to deliver those resources. And I think the previous member states from the panel also indicated to that, you can have sometimes funds, but it's not necessary that there is enough capacity or policy or resources to deliver it. So thank you very much. I will definitely come back with one question, but before that, I'll go to my other panel members. So Hoshi-san, Japan, IRP is there because of Japan from the outset of itself. The legacy from the Hugo framework, the learnings from Kobe earthquake, and so on and so forth. Now, in reflection to, let's say, the previous panel members, I think the call very specifically from Madagascar government also around, the need for IRP to move from pure knowledge generating platform to action or technical support-based platform. How do you see that moving for IRP as a partnership in itself?
Well, thank you, Abhilash. It's very difficult to say really something after hearing the needs and expectation of some of the countries. Well, as you know, as a co-chair of IRP, Japan has been engaged in sort of promotion of BBB by sharing our own experience of disaster and the process of recovery from them, possibly with good practices. But also, Japan has been extending sort of bilateral and regional support for recovery, sort of master planning or individual reconstruction project in some countries, especially in Asia and Latin America. So our general finding is that actually the context of recovery greatly varies country by country, maybe depending on economic and social settings and probably the capacity or sort of organizational capacity and human resources of government agencies and other stakeholders, as well as legal systems, as somebody raised. And also, the thing is, while disaster risk profiles are constantly changing, maybe under the climate changes, we see rapid changes in levels and sort of influencing factors of recovery now. So it's rather hard to really design the recovery readiness framework, which we are working on, that Japan essentially assumes the framework be really practical and usable to every single country, but it is really difficult to show the universal and also complete set of items for all countries and showing, hey, you can do a perfect BBB by doing this, 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 and this way. But meanwhile, the good or bad thing is now every single country has the experience of some sort of disaster and recovery everywhere in the world. So I see, Paula also mentioned the sort of transition from the IRP to delivered countries. Actually, maybe it's not just at the hands of the handful of donor countries, including Japan or international organizations, but maybe we may be able to sort of leverage what's already accumulated in individual country in recovery experiences. So while this framework outlines maybe the areas or sort of modalities of work and maybe set the minimum standard we have to achieve, then maybe IRP could facilitate kind of helping hands among countries, not just by sharing experiences after they are all done. So the question posed to me was really how to see the transition from knowledge sharing platform. Maybe one sort of very, very simplified answer is it could be a resource sharing platform. The resource is everywhere in the world now. So maybe that's how the sort of direction that Japan could steer up in the IRP based on its own bitter lessons. As I noticed as I listened to the roundtables today, some implication from Japan with mega disaster or sort of frequent or repeated disaster in recent years, they often oblige us to first really completely repaint the whole picture of the affected areas like urban planning or sort of maybe administrative setting or even the legal systems, because you cannot really just bring back better in the same way, but really in a build back in a completely different way in sometimes. And also, we often have to conform to the decision made by the affected population or community themselves after a disaster happens. So sometimes the sort of pre-designed sort of recovery plan might not work to everybody. So the usability of the framework should actually also include sort of keeping rooms for decision made at the locality itself, with maybe legal and regulatory systems or admin structure, sort of allowing those sort of rooms for decisions. So all in all, maybe it might need to involve a complete sort of different mindset or innovation in the way it is designed. So that's how we can make most of the really scattered resource everywhere in the world. Maybe it's practically hard for the IRP to collect everything in a really compound set and just send to everybody and for the different disaster. One possibility is maybe while recovery elements and decisions are totally different by countries, but there might be a sort of similarity amongst neighboring countries in the same region which share sort of same demography or sort of social, cultural backgrounds. So that's where we may have sort of potentials of providing helping hands in recovery planning and post-disaster designing amongst those stakeholders in a neighborhood, probably. And that's really one of the things that IRP might consider sort of designing some measures to facilitate that. So, well, that's just, the initial sort of the ideas that are coming up in mind. But well, we really need to design sort of concrete programming on how to do that with IRP. But sort of the essence is, IRP needs to count on every single country, as Paola rightly raised. And probably that's the very last words I want to raise here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you noticed in between, I had to let go of Paula. I was standing between her and the travel issues that she had. But thank you very much for that, Ose-san. The term you used from knowledge sharing to resource sharing, it's a very interesting concept in itself. Defining resource would also mean, it would be interpreted in different ways by different member state or the recipient of such a service line in itself. But definitely, leveraging existing experience in countries or neighboring countries, we definitely, I'm not just saying from perspective of UNDRR, but even if we look at some of the IRP's documentation itself, it already talks about how certain events and the capacity in neighboring countries could be actually used to address certain events and does not require always parachuting people from various different other backgrounds, other countries. So very helpful of that. I do have one question which I had for all three of you, which I'll anyway propose to both of you towards the end. But before that, I'll go to you, Steve. Asian Development Bank, like regional development banks, you're kind of the beating heart of any recovery reconstruction process financially, but also assisting countries through technical assistances and helping them with strengthening the public finance management processes in countries so that their recovery reconstruction processes are robust, transparent, accountable, so on and so forth. But also at the same time, ADB has been with the IRP throughout the journey. ADB has been assisting not just by bringing in the right partners into the conversation and member state, but also spreading the voice of IRP in other conversations. Now with all this conversation, last 5 years of Sendai framework, the need of making this happen, the push, I will use the word commitment if I can, because Paula already played that into the conversation. How do you see ADB, how can ADB further commit and contribute to this need to shift from knowledge to resource or to delivery on the ground? And it's not just limited to financing conversation, but beyond that.
Yeah. Thanks Abhilash. And let me just also thank Japan for their leadership on IRP, and of course you and DRR and the partners for convening us. I think it's interesting you talk about that shift in the last 5 years, as we enter the last 5 years of the Sendai framework. So I think, like many organizations, we took that opportunity in the lead up to the midterm review to also look at how we are positioned to respond to our countries, to our DMC, what we call them DMCs, developing member countries. And as a result of that process, we came up with a new action plan, and I won't bore you with the action plan itself, but just wanted to highlight one of the 4 priorities in the action plan is actually to see how we can promote effective post-disaster recovery instruments, so bonds, insurance, contingent finance, things like this, and improve frameworks for resilient recovery. And I think it's important because it says to not those of us in the bank already working on disaster risk management, we knew this already, but actually to our colleagues working with countries on their development programs, responding to their national development plans, that actually they need to take into consideration these 4 bank priorities, and one of them is on recovery and improved frameworks for resilient recovery. So I think that probably highlights ADB's commitment at a high level to this agenda. And I think the challenge we face is matching this ambition and providing this offer with with us responding to demand, right? Because as a development bank, we respond to demand, and the demand needs to come from our member countries. So they need to prioritize recovery readiness into their development frameworks, into their plans and their financing strategies. And then, of course, we have a role in supporting that. That's true. But ultimately, we need to be, I guess, invited into that space to be able to respond to that demand that they have. And I think once we are there, we're able to provide support on investments in recovery readiness and financial preparedness. There's technical assistance that can support the enabling environment, to reform policies, strengthen systems, provide capacity building. So it's all there, right? But it's about how do we, bridge this. And this is where I'm coming to with perhaps where IRP can play a role, is to support kind of connecting the governments on one side with the providers of finance and solutions on the others. So, of course, it's kind of like a demand and supply equation, and making the opportunity to meet that in the middle. And part of the IRP's, I think part of the challenge around this is engaging the right partners who are responsible within governments for this type of work. So we know that ministries of finance and planning are responsible for financing and planning. And of course, MDMOs are responsible for coordination, and then they of course have their responsibilities in preparedness and relief and response, and that's critical. But ultimately, if we're going to, I think, close the gap, if you will, on this, we need to bring in, and when I say we, I mean IRP, we need to bring in some other partners who have a vested interest in our shared objectives, right? So I guess that brings us to, well, what can ADB offer in that space? And I think that's where we can. Of course, we work with ministries of finance and planning on their development agendas every day. So I think we, and I don't want to speak for other multilateral development banks, but I think collectively we can play a greater role in supporting IRP as well, to take that different approach for that shift that you're referring to. And then just a point on the assessment tool. I think we're committed to supporting the rollout in some countries through a technical assistance that we're working on, and I think hopefully with some positive results from that we can then expand it, because I think, going to Hashi's point, we need tangible, concrete deliverables, right? And I feel like the assessment tools, when adjusted for the national context, can provide that. So, and again, the bank, ADB has a responsibility when these assessment tools are undertaken, and it identifies areas for capacity building or technical assistance, or it says that the country would like to look at how to bring in different instruments or risk transfer measures or whatever comes out of the assessment, then we're there to be able to pick that up with the country and with the Ministry of Finance and the planning, the sector ministries, potentially through policy-based lending or whatever the tool is. So I think that's a way of connecting and kind of realizing the shift.
Thank you very much, Steve. Very concrete. The multiple suggestions, but the one that you mentioned about regional, development banks having the access to finance ministries and ministries of planning, they are critical to this discussion, definitely. Invariable of there is a readiness assessment framework or not, because they are the ones who are going to take most of the critical decisions in such a process. So if IRP, with the support of ADB, can initiate that conversation, at least with 8 to 10 countries to start with, high-risk countries, that could definitely be a big leap in itself, and including, the idea around connecting needs with service providers or where the solutions are. I think that should be something that could be globally and universally applicable. It's the matter of understanding the needs and finding the right solution to connect to itself. So appreciative of it. I do have some time. I definitely could not give the opportunity to the first panel because of the rush in itself. I also have we also have IRP partners in this room, very patiently, also listening in. I definitely think this is an opportunity for you to speak. If there's something that the IRP partners also think should be done in the next 4 or 5 years of the remaining strategic framework or the Sendai framework. WHO is currently the co-chair of IRP. Very thankful to WHO. UNDP co-chaired IRP for the last 2-3 years. Very grateful to that. ADPC has a new entrant to it. ILO, we believe, is coming back to the conversation in itself. So I'm keeping the floor open, and Mike, if any of the IRP partners would like to contribute to this conversation, please feel free. But the same is to member states, colleagues. If you had to ask for one thing as a key priority to a platform which has a lot of the international organization, but also development banks and others, what would that be? Sorry. Did you raise your hand? Sorry, I didn't see. Yeah, please. Apologies, you will have to walk to your mics. Rita. Yeah.
Thank you, Sir. I think I've mentioned several challenges we've encountered during our recovery intervention. But I'm thinking perhaps the international recovery platform should more engage political will into this initiative. We can have policies, we can have legislation, but it's good for our own government to really buy in and support the idea of moving this forward in terms of mainstreaming it into a more sustainable development plans, linking it with other initiatives like climate change sort of platform. They're becoming more popular in terms of they have a bigger audience than us. So I think it's a chance for the international recovery platform to put more emphasis more on try to get the attention from our political leaders or the political will. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very, very helpful. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. Looking at recovery and the intensity and frequency of climate-related disasters, one, if you have operated for some time in this space, you'd notice that it becomes a challenge to fully recover because of the repeated incidences of climate-related disasters. And one is meant to wonder, how do you then have sustainable recovery? And I'm glad from the bank now they can sit with the disaster humanitarian to look at instruments that can foster response and recovery. But a research, and when you scan the landscape, you notice that looking for resources for recovery is more challenging than looking for resources to recover. Response resources are easily accessed because it's a crisis. But for recovery, many of the times that recovery is then thrown to development. And looking at member states and country, they always have competing needs. Therefore, recovery becomes a challenge. My question goes to the bank. How do we then narrow the gap between response and recovery nexus so that we do not lose the momentum of recovery? Because if every time we find ourselves in response time, that has the potential to derail our developmental agenda and ambition. But further to that, with the intensity and frequency of disasters, climate-related disasters going forward, there is potential to wipe out our developmental gains. How do we narrow this gap and make sure that even as we respond, we are also having sustainable recovery? I submit.
Thank you very much for the question. So, Rita, would you like to take the floor now? Yeah. Yeah, and Steve will take some few seconds to. Do you want now, or do you want? All right, go on.
I mean, I don't know if I have the answer, but definitely, I mean, I appreciate, and I think we understand now. You know, we see it a lot with our member countries. So we're supporting them respond to a disaster, and then, you know, and as my DG yesterday said, he was referencing the Indonesian example, right? The tsunami, the Palu, Sulawesi earthquake and tsunami happened in 2018, and the airport only opened last year. And that went to plan, right? Like, that was with everyone doing what they should do, there were no delays, and that critical piece of infrastructure opened last year. So, you know, recovery takes time. I don't think we could have sped up fixing the airport, right? Now, if another event happens, and to the point of the questioner, then yeah, it can get diverted into the development plans, then get diverted, right? And so I think it's a question of planning and the planning cycles. So, you know, if you have your 5-year planning cycle and then a disaster happens, it's going to impact on your ability to deliver on the 5-year planning cycle. So your annual planning then has to account for the disaster. And again, I think the questioner was making the point that, you know, it comes at a cost, right? So there's only so much headroom that a country can take, so much debt that a country, or so much grant for the least developed countries, there's only so much grant available. So at the end of the day, a government has to make those trade-offs. And I think the best space for those trade-offs to be made is in the planning space, right? So you have your annual planning, you make the adjustments, that's going to have an impact on your 5-year planning, you have to make the adjustments. But there's no silver bullet here. I mean, that's the reality.
Thank you very much, Steve. Rita, please.
Thank you very much. I think I would like to, one of the old timers of IRP, so, you know, have some reflections about how the IRP going forward. First of all, I think I must acknowledge the government of Japan's role and the Hyogo Prefecture's role in shaping this institution. Without their support, I think this would not have been what it is today. You know, come January, we are all meeting here, but then we have had a lot of other discussions, meetings and all that, which brings me to my point for the next 5 years, what would the IRP look like? I do remember in the steering committee, we were making, you know, the UNOPS member made this allusion about bringing together the services from SNLD, Santiago Network for Loss and Damage, and something of that nature for requests that come from national government related to recovery. Santiago Network does the matchmaking. IRP had an intention of doing the matchmaking through the help desk function. If you remember, there was a help desk established. Some of you, I think Steve is nodding, there was a help desk established of a lot of effort to bring in government requests and then, give them along to members, IRP members who, can support national governments in the work. It didn't work because there was not tied to resources. I would put it that way, I think, whereas SNLD has a pot already with them and SNLD would be able to. Now we are seeing more and more that there is a much more stronger matchmaking of those needs from the climate and disaster sides. So what we see addressing loss and damage is disaster recovery right now. So in that space, if there is technical assistance required for addressing loss and damage, SNLD is well placed to do that. And I think one of the roles that IRP, working closely through UNDRR with SNLD, can actually get some of these requests formally submitted to SNLD, maybe, perhaps, and then it comes back to the OBNEs who are registered there to kind of give the support. I mean, that's a quick win, I would think, in one way in which that could do, because I think the volume of requests coming to SNLD is quite high as well. I think Vanuatu is the first country piloting the technical assistance, and that has taken a bit of time from the time the request was actually proposed, but I believe now it's going to move much faster, and something like that could be an understanding that must be, so it'd be a clearinghouse, more like a clearinghouse for technical assistance that comes in, as Steve mentioned. If it is related to financing, it would be some of the banks that could be really supporting that process extremely well. If it is about governance, then other institutions, it's about employment and livelihoods, you have ILO and things of that nature that could be quite well suited to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rita. Indeed, this was discussed in the steering committee of the IRP, and thank you for also bringing that for this for a follow-up. Indeed, that's an area that we should be explored. I have 7 minutes left, or I'm up by 7 minutes 30 seconds, which is most likely the latter. I'm up by 7 minutes 40 seconds, and I don't see any further requests for floor. So before we close, there was a question which I wanted to ask all three of you, but Paula has left, so I'll still take the, I'll still shoot the arrow here. If there was one thing that the IRP should be definitely should try and deliver by 2030, it's one thing.
Well, actually, that's something I was about to say to complement the comment. The previous comment about the political will, because that I remember, it just came to my mind that something very important slipped out of my mind, that I always kind of wonder how we can show the benefit of BBB, especially in terms of finance, because if you don't really dig really deep into the elements of BBB, but just by looking at the words, maybe many of them will think it just costs more than simple recovery. And that's where probably it's hard for maybe the NDMOs or planning ministries to show that we have to really do the BBB and sort of persuade the political leaders to invest or put the priority on the national planning. So I think that the U.S. is exploring the way of showing the cost benefit of the resilient recovery, and probably that's where the IRP could also work on it, because once you know the benefit, how it is beneficial for the country's management in the long run, and it is definitely, we will sense it, and based on the experience of Japan, it just pays off. It is great. It is beneficial. Then maybe there must be a way of really leveraging all the things we have now. So that's probably one thing that we might, Thanks.
Okay, I think by 2030, I'd like to see IRP being used more by countries. I think it's a really unique platform, and we come here, those of us that are fortunate enough to come here to these forums, and there's so much to learn from each other, and particularly for a regional organization, we work with our set group of countries. This platform provides space for us, and I think for our members as well, to be exposed to other countries. And so I think that, coupled with hopefully this useful assessment tool that countries hopefully can use, and of course they're going to need to be supported for that, right? So I think somehow between those two, that would make the IRP more, be able to fulfill its potential, I guess, because I think it is such a rich resource that I want to see it being used more, because those who do know about it have that benefit, but not, as you were saying in your opening remarks, not everyone does, right?
Thank you, Steve. Political will and the number of countries that are actually taking an action, where that support is. So thank you again, both of you, for indulging me, allowing me to ask that additional question of the script. And thank you, everyone, for being patient on this conversation. I think we took up a bit of your time from coffee, so I'll pass the floor back to you. But before that, could I please have a good round of applause for the colleagues here who stayed with me, and to all of you as well. Thank you.